Good evening. Welcome to Sunday Night Magic with me, Hattie J of Variable Play, also known as Combo Commander on the Instagrams. Thank you for joining me this evening. So tonight's going to be a little bit of a round two of last week's topics because a lot more material has come up for the next set for Magic the Gathering, which is Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So we're going to be going over a few more cards because the spoiler list, or pretty much we're almost done. There's about maybe 50 cards left to the set, and all the information will be out there. Going back to what I mentioned in the previous episode, the release date for this set is scheduled around mid-July for MTG Arena, the digital version, but the definite printed version of this is going to be out on July 23rd, possibly a little bit later. Hey, our first comment. Haha, thanks, Clint. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. So I'm going to do my best to keep track of all of the comments while I'm also presenting. But so yeah, today is going to be a little bit of a round two. Quick recap of what we talked about last episode, just to give you guys some context to what you can expect from the D&D set. So the first thing that I presented last episode was the D&D style showcase artwork that they're going to be doing. So what you can see here is they did create a legendary creature card for one of D&D's infamous characters, Drizzt, and pretty much the left side you are looking at a standard Magic the Gathering template for how they make creatures. And to the right of it, you're looking at the D&D showcase version that will be available most likely through the set booster as well as the collector booster packs, while normal draft packs will have the card that you see on the left. Also, what we covered from last episode was that they're still going to be doing, of course, the extended arts. So to the left, you see the Tiamat card, another, again, very notable character from D&D lore. This is a dragon god. And pretty much the extended art version also looks really nice. And this again will be available probably through the set boosters and collector booster packs if you want to pick up the extended art version. Also, part of the recap is the land cycles. So to your left is standard evolving wilds, and they're pretty much modifying it to look like the D&D module campaign books from like the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I think that this would be maybe about first and second ed. So it pretty much makes the template of the lands look like a book cover. So that's pretty nice. And the one mechanic that we talked about last episode was the venture and dungeon mechanic. So they are introducing dungeon cards. There will be 3 dungeons available. This one here on the screen, the Lost Mine of Fandalver, is the example that I have up from. But I did present all 3 last week. If you want to see the other 2, please dig up the episode 2 of Sunday Night Magic so you can see what it looks like. For the abilities, so we have Nadar here, and pretty much whenever he comes into the game or attacks, you get to venture into the dungeon, so which means that it's either you enter, which would put you at the very top of the dungeon, or that you get to continue going down until you complete one. And once you've completed the dungeon, another ability for him triggers. So it's a perfect example because it kind of covers most of what the mechanics and how the functionality of the dungeons work. And we got a comment. Okay, let's see. Will I be talking about what's in the commander decks? Actually, they haven't really put out what's in the commander decks other than what colors as well as the names and artwork for the commanders, but I can kind of talk about that towards the end of the show. There's limited information on that at this time, but you know, if that's what you want to learn more about, I'll definitely put that in. Hey, Marco, good evening. What's up? Thank you for joining me this evening. So, what we're going to be talking about now is just a continuation of what we can expect in the D&D set. So, from what I covered in episode 2, which is sort of like the precursor, it was mostly aesthetics that the D&D style artworks and card templates that you can expect it to look like the old manuals, and they put flavor text on basic lands. The only mechanic that we really got to talk about in the last episode was the dungeons, as well as how you course through it using the venture mechanic. Now, for today, we're going to talk about a couple of other things. The very first one is that for the first time, they have created a brand new card type, and it is classes. So they are introducing D&D classes to Magic the Gathering. And the way that they chose to do that is by creating enchantments. So this here on screen is an example of the Druid class. Basically, it has a casting cost, which is one generic color and one green. As you cast it, it is an enchantment. So it's a permanent that sits in front of you and pretty much has an immediate effect, which you can all see on the top right. So it doesn't outright say level 1, but you can assume that the very top area is what you would call level 1. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain a life. Now, there is a little bit of a text that is also included there in the upper right corner that says that gain the next level as a sorcery and add its ability. So the next level, as you can see in the center of the card, is level 2. You need to pay 2 generic mana and 1 green, and then you can progress to level 2. What this means is similar to what we talked about in last episode, that most likely they're going to be making some kind of counter that players can use to move down and tick this track, or you can use a coin or anything that you might have. But this is again another little bit of marketing that I'm so sure that people are going to create, like just these little tokens or even 3D print things that will help you track this, and people are going to make a killing. Like people want to bling out their cards and much more once you throw in accessories all over it. But so just to kind of circle back into the topic, that this is the very first time that they've made an enchantment type that is known as class. So there are different subtypes for these cards, and the mechanics that we're looking at here is actually very similar to a previous ability that Magic used to have. So from a set back in 2010, I believe this one here is World Wake, but it is coming from the very first Zendikar block. They introduced the concept of level up. So the example that you have here on screen is a Merfolk Soldier. It comes in as a 2 to cast 2/2. That's it. Now, you can put a level counter on it for paying 1 colorless mana. As it reaches level 2 to 3, you can see that its stats change. It becomes a 3/3, and then it gains flying. And then from 4 onwards, it is a 4/4, and other merfolks you control get +1/+1. So it learns to fly as it levels up, which is very interesting for a merfolk that's supposed to be waterbound. But that's it comes to flavor in terms of like how Zendikar function. But so this is the first attempt for leveling up. Now, what Magic has decided to do was to take this mechanic of you paying to progress on a card and added it into a different art frame, so to speak. So I'll take a step back and show you. So as you can see, it technically does have the same mechanics of having levels, but aesthetically, they chose to use a different card type that does exist. This here is what is known as a saga. This was introduced in the Dominaria set, and as you can see, it is also an enchantment. And this one moves down in its saga or lore counters every turn, regardless of whether you want to or not. It's gonna progress. But you can see that they took the same template and art style and pretty much just flip the artwork and text. So instead of the artwork being to the right, they moved it to the left. I think that that's pretty smart so that it can be easily distinguished from one another. So going back to the class card, you can see there the art is to the left, and pretty much the abilities are similar to what would be in the level up mechanic. Hi, Ron. Thank you for joining. Oh, wow. Yes. So a lot of the artworks that we were talking about or I showed earlier are going to be from the set boosters or collector booster boxes. Now, like for this class example here, this is a standard card. So I'm sure that they will probably end up making a specialized version of this. It hasn't been spoiled yet, but we're 50 cards left and the full set is spoiled, but in terms of the alternate arts, we're not done yet. I'm so sure they're gonna throw a curveball. But going back to this, as you can see here, there is one class which is the druid, and it is color green, which makes perfect sense. Now, along with the druid class, they're going to be introducing 11 other classes, bringing the total to 12. There are a couple of ones here that seem like almost auto colored, in terms of like the color pie and the different ideologies of each color. Like a ranger makes sense to be green, a cleric should be white. I'm a little iffy about the bard being red and green. Wizard is definitely blue, okay, and then the sorcerer is red blue, so it has a little bit more of risk and sacrifice involved with it, which definitely makes sense. I think that they did a pretty good job with majority of the class abilities here. I think the monk I would have gone more with the green white, and the fighter might have been better as the red green. But the cards have already been made. It's just a matter of personal taste of what would have been more appropriate. So there are going to be 12 classes. Now, in a standard game of Magic, you can have four of a kind. Now, I don't know why you would want to have, let's say, four clerics. You could definitely trigger them and have multiple effects, but it doesn't necessarily bring anything else to the game. It doesn't give you additional units or means to attack. So I'm not. I'm predicting that this may not be as commonly used as people may see it. In the game of Commander for EDH in my format, that since you can only have one off, this might be something that you can include if you're using a certain kind of build, if you're more combat oriented, if you're trying to gain more life, and these don't go away. So it's like almost having a permanent trigger or additional ability as you continue playing your match. So it's a very unique effect. I can't wait to see how it's going to shape or adjust the standard meta as well as any other accompanying formats that Magic is pushing, like Modern Horizons just came out. So they're definitely trying to ramp up also on the modern format. But I know that since this is meant to be with standard, that they really have that in mind when they develop this. Let's move on to the next one. So the next thing that people can expect from the set is a little bit unique in that we probably will not see anything like this again, but it is also something that Magic could adopt moving forward if they wanted to. So this here is an example of you meet in a tavern. So they've made cards that have been like situational because it's D&D. It's based on little events and things that would happen to your party, like oh you find prisoners, you're lost in a dungeon, like so they're putting situations as the names of the cards. Now for the effect, if you're a Magic player that has been playing this for X number of years, you'd probably be very familiar with how the card works. This is like a modal card. You have two choices. So it says choose one. Look at the top 5 cards of your library and then so on, followed by the next one. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. What they've done and made unique with this set is that the choices have names now. It's like a mechanically unique effect that so when you play this spell and someone it's like what does the spell do? You can choose to form a party or you can choose to start a brawl. And then they add in an explanation of what that means. Magic doesn't typically do this. It just lays out your options and you choose one. So they've decided to name the abilities. You're gonna see a lot more as we are looking at other cards, but this is unique in a way that everything in italics and magic cards are typically reminder text or abilities. So I don't think there's ever gonna be another card that says start a brawl as its active ability that flying, banding, trample, first strike. There's not going to be start a brawl. So what they've done here is they've taken the decision making and the events and encounters of D&D and like translated your choice into an effect. So that's one thing that people can expect from this set, and it might throw some people off because seeing it in italics you might think that it's reminder text or it's an official rule or ability. It is going to be official, but it's not necessarily a unique mechanic. It's more of flavor and then you see what it does. So next one, kind of adding on to that, is they are now putting in or they've added in the D20 into Magic the Gathering. So as you can see here, you can actually take away that whole text of search the room. It is just pay 5 colorless and a blue, and you roll a d20. Based on the results, you have a little bit of a table underneath that gives you the effect. So you don't actually need search the room. It isn't an ability, but for the purposes of D&D being incorporated into Magic, they've added it in. Ooh, comment. Let's see. Oh, good evening. Thank you for joining, Mark. So going back, search the room is being added in as as a reminder text, but the actual ability is just to roll a d20. Now we have to touch this because actually even Magic themselves, Wizard of the Coast, has also addressed this in a recent video that is out on YouTube. Magic has been always been giving in terms of dice that every time you go to a pre-release event, if you buy one of the gift bundles, they provide these dice as promotional, and it comes in with the products that you buy, but they serve a very distinct purpose. These are called spin down life counters. So in Magic, you have 20 life, and so this is a 20-sided dice, but as you can see, it's sequential. The whole idea is that you keep track of your life total while spinning the die. Hence a spin down life counter. There's no zero. Once you get to 1, then after that, you're dead. So this here was made for the purposes of tracking your life total. This was not meant to be rolled or used for the purposes of this ability that you see on screen because this is sequential. This is not a randomized or balanced die. They've even gone so far as to make larger versions of these dice. So they're like the jumbo-sized spin-down life counters. They have acknowledged this, and they will be most likely releasing actual D20s. So these are real D20s that for Dungeons and Dragon players they're very familiar with. A little bit of a lesson: if you take 2 ends of the dice, they're supposed to add up to 21. So like a 1 has a 20 in the other end, so 21. This 5, I can tell you, has a 16 on the other end, which is 16. So it's always supposed to add up to 21. Just like for a D6, for example, no matter what end you choose, it will always add up to 7. So 1 and 6. This is 2. The other end is a 5. It should always add up that way. That's how they balance the dice. So the long distributed spin down life counters that Magic has isn't gonna be acceptable for the purposes of rolling a d20 unless you house rule it. Really, it's your call. But I have to say that, okay, you have the spin down, you have like the larger ones if you really need to see it. And if you're okay with this being used, okay. But in terms of a competitive level of Magic, you're definitely going to need real balanced D20s. Now, the effect, as you can see here, is you roll a D20, paying 6 mana just to possibly draw a card isn't that great. So there are better examples. This is just a common card, but they are introducing the D20. There's actually a really great card. I think it's called a treasure chest. I wish I prepared that, but its ability is busted. Now, to help players along with this, they're also introducing other effects that is in D&D flavor. They are introducing advantage. So the way that Magic uses die rolls at the moment is in replacement to coin flipping. So that's actually going to make it also a little bit difficult to some of the things that we're used to just rolling dice for. Yes, I agree. It is very interesting. I want to see where they go with it, but for now they've brought it in, and it's only for one set. So let's see if it carries over, if it can apply to future cards. But pretty much to help players along, for example, what you have here on screen is called a Pixie Guide, and it says that if you would roll one or more dice, instead roll that many plus one, and then you ignore the lower roll. So in D&D rules, advantage really means that you roll 2 dice and keep the higher result, while disadvantage would be that you keep the lower result. So it's a good translation into Magic because they've added in the D20 effect. So it will definitely help players. And, again, you don't need the word or the phrase grant advantage. As you can see, it can be just a static ability on this fairy. If you would roll a die, roll another one, ignore the lower. So they're putting in, again, keywords in just for the sake of flavor. So don't let that throw you off. So we've gone classes, D20s, keywords, so to speak, like being added in. And another thing that they're adding in is this is more of the back end, really, behind the cards, which I personally find very interesting. And a little bit of it might be surprising that you guys might appreciate. So this card here is Minx, the Beloved Ranger. First thing I want to point out here is that they have introduced rangers into Magic the Gathering's creature types. There is no other card there are no other rangers that exist before this set. So this is going to be the first time that there are officially rangers added in. So as part of the classes that we talked about earlier, there already are warriors, there are already clerics, there are already I'm going to say, yeah, there are barbarians, yes. So several of the types, warlocks already exist in Magic the Gathering. So they're going to be introducing a couple of new ones. And this one I wanted to point out really specifically because this guy specifically creates a hamster, a legendary hamster. So along with Ranger being added in, they are now adding in hamsters. There is a legendary hamster being added into Magic lore. I don't know what they can do next. They've made legendary squirrels. Now they've made legendary hamsters. We've come to that point. I don't know. And it's trample. It can go over things that if it ever gains power larger than its opponent, a hamster can probably deal damage over like legendary creatures if you pump it high enough, which is just so awkward and just so out there and so Magic. So along with this is another addition. They are officially adding in half breeds, so to speak. There has never been a human elf in any Magic card ever until this set. So there are a lot of half breeds in D&D lore, like a human orc or human elf. So it's interesting that they have added this in, and it's just seamlessly added in. There are a lot of cards in Magic that, if it's an elf, it's an elf, and then you can give it subtypes. Elf wizard, elf cleric. This is the first time that it's going to be human elf, and then bard. There's never been a bard in Magic. Now there is bards. So, it's going to be a long way before you can have a bard tribal deck, but just adding them in is, one step towards really incorporating D&D to Magic's creature types, so to speak. They actually used to have a count of this. There used to be there's a card in Magic called the Mistform Ultimus that had every creature type, and every set they kept updating the list of all the possible creature types it could be. They've since then already created changelings that are just everything. So this is one more added to that list. And if you ever look it up, you'd be totally surprised at how long the list is of how many creature types exist in Magic. And joining it are halflings. Magic created their own halfling creatures that were known as kitkins, and it was always they were like the hobbits basically. And this is officially introducing halflings again into Magic the Gathering creature types. It's interesting. They've made legendary ones and they're non-legendary to expect in the set. I'm definitely going to do another episode once the whole set is spoiled to talk about like my top picks for the set, as well as possibly recommendations for possible commanders, the legendary creatures from the set. But it's just, it's interesting that bards are in, human elf, so half breeds are in, rangers are in, hamsters are in, and they're also going to be adding in tieflings. So another race or species, so to speak, in D&D is being added into Magic lore. So we will be having tieflings. And then one of the final ones that I did spot and I just had to share is the Beholder. And they went with, there are other Beholders in the set, but I just wanted to feature this one because Xanathar is one of the more infamous Beholders in D&D lore, and just seeing him in card form and how busted his ability is. You basically can control your opponent during your turn. He cannot cast spells and you can play the top of his library. It kind of really fits in with what a Beholder does because you cannot cast any spells at them. It almost automatically counters everything. So this one, I think, is a good job in terms of flavor. I don't know if black blue was the greatest choice, but I get it. I mean, it's like the whole sneaky and evil color combination. So, good on them for that. Last things that I wanted to share. I mean, it's not mechanics, but it's just something again that I also really appreciate and what I think people will like to see with the new set. So I did show last episode the legendary dragons that are being added into the set. So just to share one more time, they've added a couple of more. So they have zombie dragons and just the usual legendary dragons. These are the extended art versions that look gorgeous. I would love to have these in my collection. I'm not necessarily a dragon player, like I don't really have a dragon deck, but these cards just look so badass. So, as a touch of flavor, they are introducing the legendary dragons. So these are notable characters from D&D lore, from modules and adventures, but they are also bringing in just the generic dragons. And I wanted to share those as well because the artwork for them is stunning. These are the extended artwork for the dragons that are going to be added to the set. So as you can see, fire breath, acid breath, poison breath. These are, again, keywords that don't necessarily have to be there, but for flavor purposes, they are. The artwork on these dragons are amazing. And I really personally cannot wait to see them like in foil versions. So that's going to be awesome. It's interesting that the gold dragon is red and white. So I assume this is also again with alignment to their beliefs. So that again is the second episode or second go round for the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons crossover set with Magic the Gathering Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. They really should have shortened this, but you know what? It is what it is. Um, a lot of things to look forward to. Some mechanically unique things being added into the set. Some cards to look forward to. D20s making it into Magic. Let's see how that goes. Some keywords that aren't really keywords. They just flavored your or added flavor to your options and choices. Um, I like some of it. It works for me. While some of it is, I know it's really for the fandom and for people that it's a way of bringing in people from D&D into Magic. I've already made that jump, and I play both, so I'm already sold. So I know it's not meant for me, but I also see the merits in it, and I hope that you guys also enjoyed what I presented today for our second go around for this upcoming set. Again, July 15, it will be out digitally on Magic Arena, while the printed version is scheduled for July 23rd. Given the current global situation and supplies and such, I wouldn't be surprised if it got delayed towards the end of the month. But new set, new cards. It's like the 88th, or I think 80th. I'm trying to remember, but it's like really, really far into the expansion. So there's just so much Magic content, and they're firing it out almost every other month now. Like this is my third episode, and I'm already on the second set, so that means that there hasn't been more than 2 weeks in between two possible set releases. Wizard of the Coast is belting out so much Magic the Gathering products. Now, to go back to a question that was asked earlier by Clint, they have announced the 4 commander decks that are going to be released for D&D. There is artwork for how the commanders look, but their abilities and also how they look like in card format doesn't exist yet. The color combinations have been put out, and pretty much there are going to be 2 decks that are tricolor and then 2 that are just dual color. The names of the deck are also been revealed, and they kind of give you an idea of what the mechanics behind it will be. Each deck will have 17 unique cards, and the whole theming of it is that each deck is supposed to be or represent a party member, that the commander or legendary creature that they have in the front of it is like one member of a 4-man party. So, it doesn't fit so much in terms of being competitive, but flavor wise, it's interesting that, it's 4 different characters that either complement each other if you guys are like partnering up against another player, or that they're balanced, that they can go head to head and can kind of counteract each other. So once we have information of what the commander deck contents are going to be, I definitely will be doing an episode on that as well. So we're a little bit over 30 minutes. For those of you that were here from the start, just testing out the new intro, and we'll hopefully have some more things set up for the next episode. It's going to be ever evolving, and I think I'm going to stick with the 9 p.m. schedule for the Sundays. And again, thank you for those who commented and joined me today. We got like a few viewers, and I really appreciate the feedback. If you want to see specific Magic the Gathering related content, please be sure to comment below. I'll do my best to add it in. Again, as I have discussed in my first and second episode, I am primarily a commander or EDH player. So a lot of my thinking and mindset is really directed towards that. But if you want to talk about pauper, legacy, modern, vintage, any of the other formats of Magic, I'd happily dive in there and provide what I can. So Thank you everyone for joining me today. Keep gaming.